As you know from watching this show, what's happening with our children in our schools, whether it's the curriculum, whether it's gender ideology or other sexual education activism that's being put on our kids outside of parents' purview, it's pretty important to us. It's also pretty important to our next guest. In fact, she's been way ahead of this story before many of us. She's the author of Hide Your Children. She is Liz Wheeler, host of the appropriately named Liz Wheeler Show, and you're here in Washington. It's good to see you in town.
I am. Thank you for having me in studio. I've been on your show before, but never in the place.
This is fun, and thank you for being here with us because we just had Congressman Mike Johnson earlier. He chaired the committee yesterday on gender affirming care, and the name gender affirming care is part of the problem here. When the left owns the language, when you think about it, gender affirming care is actually the opposite of what they claim it is.
It is, and that's exactly. People sometimes get nervous when you use the word Marxist because they're like, oh, is that a little hyperbolic? We're talking about Karl Marx here, the Communist Manifesto. But it's a Marxist tactic to redefine words. Yeah. Because when you think, oh, gender affirming, what's negative about that? What's threatening about that? What's dangerous about that? You don't really think about it. It's a very neutral euphemism, but truly it's the path to hormones, cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and bodily mutilation surgery, and it's awful.
My mentor, Andrew Breitbart, when he was writing his book, he did a whole section on critical theory and all of the people behind, whether it's critical gender theory, critical race theory, any critical theory, fill in the blanks, they were all Marxists. That's what this is.
We're seeing that in our country right now. This is one of the messages that I've been speaking as loudly as I can to as many people as I can, is that if we want to be able to defeat the left, and not just the left like the Democrat Party, but this leftist poisonous ideology that's attacking our children, we have to first acknowledge the reality of the political enemy that we face. Meaning we're not in a well-intentioned negotiation with good faith opposition who are just proposing unwise policies based maybe on shared values.
Yeah.
That might have been the case 25, 30 years ago, but right now we have to look at who's propagating critical race theory, what's behind queer theory and the transgender ideology, this moral relativism and redefinition of words. What is this? Mm-hmm. It's not just a random assortment of nonsense.
Right.
It is exactly what you said. It comes from Marxist roots. Even the word woke. This has been such a word that we've used so much. If you trace this back to where it came from, it's fascinating, and it, of course, is Marxist.
Yeah, and by the way, you make a great point here. I've been talking about this very revealing interview that Paul Ryan gave about a month ago where he said, oh, well, I'm not really a culture war guy. He was the Speaker of the House. He was the vice presidential candidate. He was a leading voice of the Republican Party, and he's bragging about the fact that he doesn't like to get engaged in that. This is how it happened. This is how we lost school board elections, because conservatives were like, yeah, we're not going to get involved in that. Well, look what happened.
It's too uncomfortable to talk about abortion. It's too embarrassing to talk about transgenderism. No one wants to offend their friends to talk about gay marriage. This is one of the reasons that we lost, because conservatives, and my book is coming out in September, the second half of it is essentially a critique of the Republican Party, because the Republican Party clearly has not fought well against the forces of evil. Otherwise, we wouldn't be living in this era of chaos that we're living in. But Republicans have had their heads in the sand. They think that if you just focus on economics, you just focus on a strong national security, both important things, yes, but if you only focus on those things, then you are ceding cultural ground to people that want to control those cultural institutions. I don't believe in neutrality. I don't believe in a playing field where everything is just morally even level, and that you can make decisions for yourself. Either the left controls things or we control things. Either it's controlled by wrong or by right. And Republicans for the last 50 years have allowed the left to control everything because we're so worried about coming off as religious.
You, oh, God forbid, right? So to speak. You put out a video on your social media platform, on Twitter, I think it was, or X. Sorry, Elon.
What are tweets even supposed to be called now?
X's? Or,
no, I refuse.
We don't need any X's in our life. The message was, you pointed something out which is really important. These young girls who are feeling, for various reasons, and I can understand it, I went through puberty too, feeling uncomfortable with their body, they're feeling uncomfortable with their role in society, all these things, and they don't feel any positivity about being a young woman and becoming a mature woman. You put out some positive. It's like they need to hear more positive messages about being a woman and what it's like to be a woman, like truly embracing your womanhood. Why aren't they getting that now?
Yeah, it's fascinating. This actually came about, this segment that I did, based on a very sad discussion I had with my cousin, who's a teacher, who was talking about a 12-year-old in her class, beautiful young woman who said, oh, all of a sudden I'm transgender. And she was like, where did this come from? This child obviously hasn't been suffering from gender dysphoria. This girl was hitting puberty before a lot of her peers were. She was developing a womanly body. She came from divorced parents where they had kind of set up to a new family. She didn't feel like she was included the same way. You know, she's around this indoctrination in school and on TikTok. And meanwhile, our culture tells young women that they're constantly going to be victims, that you're gonna be sexually harassed and sexually abused, you're going to face discrimination, you're never going to be paid equally.
If I can include here, the proliferation of porn and
Yes,
the fact that young people,
objectification of women.
I'm a young girl and I'm seeing porn the way they are seeing porn right now, that doesn't look like anything I want to be involved in. That it looks harsh, it looks violent, it looks demeaning.
That's exactly right. So all of these cultural forces are telling women that they are less than men. The feminist narrative actually does tell women that you're less than men, and that the only solution to that is to try to ape men, to try to copy what men want and how men think and how they behave. And I remember I said to my cousin when I was talking to her about this, I was like, oh, this poor little girl has never been told how amazing it is to be a woman. Like, we have no counter message to these young women to say, listen, your body is like that because it's intended to create life. The most amazing, miraculous, fulfilling thing that you can't actually fathom until it happens to you. That we are intuitive about other people in a different way than men are.
In a way that men are incapable of being, frankly.
You could argue.
Yeah. So, I mean, but Liz, you're so wrong about this because they got the Barbie movie, and that gave them all the positive messages women need to learn, right?
No, I refuse to go see the Barbie movie. First of all, I don't have the attention span for movies.
Wait, I'm sorry, you can't sit through a 90-minute movie?
Absolutely not.
Good to know. What are you, a chipmunk?
I could never sit through a 90-minute movie without either falling asleep or pulling my phone out to get on Twitter. It would never happen. I also have a 2.5-year-old, so
all right,
when do I even have time for that?
Sure.
But it's a feminist woke movie. It tells women, I mean, isn't the first scene of it young women playing with dolls told at one point young women thought that they could only be mothers, and these girls are portrayed as being miserable.
Wow.
It's the opposite of that. So these young girls then are left with this idea of, why do I even want to be a girl? Like, what is good about this?
Yeah.
Because they're being bullied, they're surrounded by indoctrination, and I think that as a culture, we can't just say no to feminism. We have to offer an alternative to these young girls so that they don't fall into this confusion.
You're in town because you're speaking to college kids with Young America's Foundation.
Yes.
You do a lot of things. I do things with YAF. They send you out to college campuses and you piss off all the right people. I love that. What are you telling the kids in town here? And what kind of reaction do you get from young people right now when you send them these messages?
Yeah, the Young America's Foundation National College Conference is happening right now. I just got off giving the keynote address. Most wonderful crowd. I am sorry to pick favorites, but they are my favorite people to speak to.
I agree.
They are so wonderful. They're so intellectually advanced and philosophically advanced while also having this beautiful innocence still, meaning their parents are raising them right.
And energy, too, which you always love when you're giving a speech.
They're so fun. They're so fun. And I challenged them as young conservatives to think differently than the Republican Party of the past, whose negligence has led us to this chaos.
Yeah.
I challenged them to think about our country. We're supposed to be a free country, but what does that mean? What is society supposed to look like if we're a free country? And I challenged them to ask themselves the question, is freedom the ultimate end, or is freedom the means to something greater? Because if you answer those questions, depending on which answer you give, your policy prescriptions and your ideas for what our society should be are going to be very different.
Interesting. So in other words, is freedom just, is our goal to achieve freedom so that we can be a free people, or do we want to be a free people so then we can do B, C, and D?
Yes, exactly. So for example, if freedom is the ultimate end, then Drag Queen Story Hour is a blessing of liberty.
Yeah, there's no objections.
And I think everyone listening to the show knows in their gut that it's not, there's no inherent morality to that. Just because those men have the freedom to gyrate in front of young children, that's not moral, that's not good.
Right.
Which means that freedom must not be the end in and of itself. It must be a tool to achieve something else. And I challenged these students to analyze from a historical and philosophical perspective, what is the something greater?
Yeah.
What are we trying to achieve with our society?
So 19 and 20-year-olds, though, I'm guessing their instinct is, oh, just let people do whatever they want.
Of course, just like my instincts were when I was 19 or 20. I confess fully that I had more libertarian leanings when I was young. In fact, I think it was 2016 CPAC, after I spoke, there was this independent journalist that stopped me in the lobby after and asked me, well, what do you think the role of government should be in our society? Like, how do you define liberty? And I gave him a very libertarian answer, like, get off my lawn, except for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, then do you believe in the legalization of drugs, like not just marijuana, but heroin and cocaine and fentanyl? And I was like, well, no, that would be destructive to our society. And he's like, well, didn't you just contradict yourself then? And it's stuck with me since then, because the answer is yes, it does. If you want any kind of acknowledgement of morality in your society, then freedom can't be the ultimate goal. There has to be an order to society.
We love your passion and the fact that you think things through and you make other people think. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
So go to YouTube and see her YAF speech that she just gave, and keep it here. There's more to come on Content.